Um, Ladies and gentlemen, we're here this evening with Brian Michael Baxter.
Hello, everybody. Thank you
And,
very much, Dr. Darrell, for having me.
I'm Daryl Hamamoto. It's October 27th, and the time is 6:46 p.m. I'm broadcasting from the beautiful state capital of California, Sacramento. And Brian, where do you reside?
I am in lovely Oceanside, California, near the beach. We're actually in Vista, but it's just a short little trip down the 78 right there.
Great. And for the benefit of our listeners, our audience here, before we delve deeply into your psyche or your history, however far you want to go, please give us an idea of who you are, what you do, and your day job, your singing career, which I'm quite interested in, if you would.
Sure. Well, let's start, I guess, from the beginning. Born in Riverside in 1973 on March Air Force Base. My father was in the Air Force. Just getting back from Guam, where I was conceived. My dad was a guitar player, so that's where I had my first interest in music, and that kind of drop kicked me right into that gear pretty quick. One of my first memories is actually tugging on his pant leg to get his attention, and he pretty much kicked me off because they were jamming. Later on, we moved to Lake Tahoe, and my mother became a disc jockey on a local radio station there. So I basically grew up at a radio station in the B studio playing vinyl records all night to after I got my homework done.
So that's where the voice came from? Your voice, your mellifluous voice?
I'm not sure. I mean, everybody said that'd be something you should get into eventually, and I never quite found my way into the radio industry, but later on, of course, into the music business with all sorts of different, not only the singing, but also into the business end of it, band management, music production, recording, live music, all that kind of stuff. It just always, all of it fascinated me from an early age. And I explored it pretty deeply before I got kicked out of Hollywood.
Now, the reason I ask is that we met, a couple months ago?
Yeah, down in La Jolla at the book signing for Mr. Webb, the great Mr. George Webb.
George Webb.
Which is how I met you in one certain way, from seeing you with McDuff and the Thursday Trio, which is still one of my favorite happenings.
Okay.
So that was great.
And when I met you, the voice popped out at me. I said, this guy is in radio or he's a singer?
I was born with it, I guess. It's something something nobody can take away from you.
Well, I'm thinking it comes from if she was good enough to be a professional DJ, she might have had it. And then, of course, your father, the music.
KOWL AM 1490, South Lake Tahoe, California.
What are the call letters again? I'm sorry.
KOWL and KRLT. I think they were pretty much the only kind of rock and roll, that adult contemporary 60s, your favorites from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So that was, and I actually, as a kid, I did commercials for Baskin Robbins, and got I think I paid in a year's supply of free ice cream or something like that. So it was well worth it as a kid doing that. So, and later even I got to wear the mascot outfit, the dancing owl that they would have at the at the Ford dealership every month with the free hot dogs. It was a blast.
So you went on these radio station promos?
Sure, all the time. Yeah, if I wanted to hang out with my mom and she was doing something like that, then I could be her sidekick a little bit, and we could spend more quality time. So it was an interesting experience. Later on, the radio station itself was in the Harvey's Hotel and Casino that ended up being blown up. So the radio station had to be evacuated, and I can't remember what year that was. I think it was in the early 80s, and they had a guy.
This is in Lake Tahoe?
Yeah, they either blew that up or they blew one of the casinos up. I know that. I think that was kind of like an insurance.
It was a demolition?
Yeah, it was a demo, but I'm not sure if it was. I'd have to look back on that, but I know at that point in time it was a pretty interesting experience.
That makes sense. Now, where's the singing come in? Because you introduced yourself as a as the
Sure.
lead singer to a Black Sabbath cover band.
Yeah, we're
Where
called
did it
Into
come
the Void. We've been together about 4 years, and I basically answered a Craigslist ad that said we're a Black Sabbath tribute band, and we're playing, but we need our Ozzy. We need an Ozzy real bad, because you can't make it happen without the Ozzy. You wouldn't have anybody to bite the bat's head off.
in?
So it's a pretty important role. And even though I don't quite look the part, my locks aren't quite up to snuff for what he looked like back in the day. I try to make it up by doing my best effort to put on a good performance. And now we've worked up from, first set of maybe 10 to 13, 15 songs, and you just keep adding and working and adding and working. And now we're about 4 hours of material, and playing 3 hours at the state fair last year. So that was, or the county fair right down the road here in Del Mar. So that was that was the high point before everything got shut down and the music industry got annihilated by a fake bug. Wow.
Right.
Who could have seen this coming, right? You think we just, all I want to do is rock and roll for the folks, and we're battling an imaginary bug.
I know.
Wow.
Well, let's talk about bugs then. You say you have a military background, and it just so happens today in preparing for this conversation between you and me, and it was random. I just plugged in a solid state drive of mine, and I found an old file, and it happens to be a file that I compiled of one Helmut Lammers. I believe he's Austrian by nationality.
Okay.
And how I came across him is a book that was referenced in one of these strange sites that we all read, correct? And he had authored a book called My Lab, all caps, MILAB. And that is an acronym for military abductee. And the thesis there is that there's an entire cohort. I won't say it's as large as the population, but there's a defined group of individuals who were brought under mind control regimes or programs via the military. And we've seen it, and you and I had these discussions earlier.
Yeah.
During the 60s, where any number of people, and of course this is in any number of books and articles that we've all read and digested.
The MKs, as I would call it, because they used to just be one, and now the more of them just keep coming and keep coming. Well, which MK are you talking about? Are we talking Monarch? Are we talking? Just amazing the kind of disclosure.
Well, this is a subset of what you would call the MKs. This is the MILABs, military abductees. Now, and we'll get to your situation in a moment. Let me just set this up here.
Sure. But
Helmut Lammers happens to be a physicist, a theoretical and applied physicist, and he teaches or he's in the laboratory. Let me see, I can find his bio here. He's with the Austrian Academy of Science Space Research Institute in Graz, Austria. So this is not your ordinary. Pardon me?
What was the time frame of his research?
It's I think the book is less than 10 years old.
Wow, so it's modern.
Current. And I also went into a database to find his academic articles, and he is a top-notch physicist. Not that I understand the particulars of it. The point I'm trying to make here is that this is not your run-of-the-mill person who talks about experiencers, right? And what I'm trying to establish here is that there are any number of people who have all the legitimate, quote unquote, credentials, such as Dr. John Mack. Have you heard of him? John
I have
Mack?
not. No, I haven't.
He calls what you refer to as MKs or abductees or MILABs, he calls them experiencers. He's a medical doctor. Psychiatry, I think, was his training. And he was at Yale. And he would interview any numbers of individuals, and they would regress into their earlier parts of lives, and there would be consistent patterns coming up.
Yeah.
And it was so alarming to the rest of the faculty that they went on a hunt for him. And he, of course, he was exonerated. After a time. They said, well, this is part of his this is his research, and he's protected under the principles of academic freedom. Nonetheless, he was stigmatized as such. he became a legend. There's another person by the name of David Jacobs, again from the academic world, like Helmut Lammer, the Austrian gentleman that I just referred to, who had interviewed any number of individuals and has earned quite a solid reputation as a result. So
the numbers keep adding up, don't they? And it's kind of hard when using almost like a poor man's Occam's razor.
Right.
The evidence is so overwhelming that when you hear the contrary, it rings very hollow.
So I think what we're establishing here is that the Yahoo factor that used to be applied to individuals who came forward with unique experiences, that's beginning to fall by the wayside. Yeah. We're seeing a lot of different areas that are now coming to light that people are now beginning to accept. Some of them highly unsavory, as in the case of
unfortunately, the exposure these days is unprecedented, and it just keeps showing what, for myself, it's like I get to the point I don't need any more proof. You've seen enough, and now it's almost the question is, what is the action that needs to be taken? What are the discussions that need to happen? And you look at one crooked politician and you say, well, so what? And they say that's the way the game's always been played. Well, there's a pretty fundamental problem that I have with that as a veteran and someone who used to believe in the ideas of the Constitution and the Republic as it was founded. The conversation that we need to have is we need to realize that they're all on the tape. Pretty much, and like I think I've heard you maybe postulate on, or McDuff, that to get to that certain level of power, you had to have traded something along the way. So there's the compromise that runs so deep from one end of the spectrum to the other, whether you're on the right or the left, that I wish that's the discussion we need to have, not as how much crack does Hunter smoke. It's just, I think that's a distraction. I think that's a limited hangout.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think most of us, at least many of us, and me included, have, for the most part, abandoned the notion of getting justice through the legal system.
Yeah.
Whether it's William Barr or whoever else it is, the system is so wrapped up in this larger framework, which the majority of the public rejects, but we seem to be at an impasse here. So what I'd like to do here today with you, with your assistance, and on the basis of your experience, is to begin to unblock this impasse, and and do it through metaphysical means.
Yeah, that's where we have to go, because obviously, like you said, that the
it.
idea of justice, the way that we used to think about it, is gone. And they've done I give it to them, my hat's off to them, because they've done a really excellent job in the way that they crafted this. They've completely enrobed themselves in some sort of what their idea, their perversion of a law is. For someone like myself, and this is why I'm very humbled to be on your platform and be walking in the shoes of titans, Nina Poo, and your relationships with the great George Webb and McDuff, and just as just a common man. That's the way I think of myself. I'm not a professor. I'm not a noted author. I'm not a social influencer. I don't have a website. I don't have a Patreon. But hopefully what I can bring to the table is the discussion from the common man's viewpoint, common citizen's viewpoint. And I hope I'm not alone in saying this, but what we would like as a country, as a society, to evolve into from the perverted place that we see ourselves now. We need to cut that corruption away and hopefully begin anew in a different and more positive manner and take a higher road together. That's my hope.
Brian, given that prelude, it seems that you're just the man I need to talk to.
I'm here.
I hope to be interviewing. You refer to yourself as a common man. Every person's exceptional. I don't just mean that in a patronizing fashion. But I've learned so much from people from all walks of life.
Yeah.
If I have one skill that I'm proud about, I'm a pretty good listener. and I can understand and I can feel where people are taking us on an emotional level as well as a rational level. I have a pretty good facility for that. I like to think so. And earlier you had shared with me something quite private, and you can go as far as you want to
Sure. Yeah.
in this area. And I was astounded by it, but immediately the bit that you shared with me conformed to a lot of the literature that I've been reading. You might indeed be what Dr. John Mack refers to as an experiencer.
Well, of course, I don't have any proof. What proof do I have until that lightning bolt hits me right between the eyes and the revelations come down from above, and you receive your program, if you will, what your real purpose is on this world, on this timeline, right here where I'm at in Oceanside or California. You can bring it right down to that locality at that point in time. So I guess we'll start. I did mention I was raised in South Lake Tahoe. My mother was kind of the free range hippie style, and I did not go to a conventional church or a synagogue or a mosque. I had a meditation group, and I called her Aunt Kathy. That was the leader of the meditation circle. And that was probably from about age 5 to around age 10 when I got a skateboard and a mohawk and started trying to be my own thing. Um, so I had an idea about the metaphysical and the spirit, a different realm, and it was a little bit different from something that was just contained in a book. It wasn't something that was contained to a certain house of worship, or it didn't. It was very individualized to the self. Um, so of course, later on, as I grew out of that and grew away from my mother, we're talking 13 at this point. And I remember we went down to Carson City, and I said, okay, I'll go with you guys down there. And they were going to a channeling event. I kind of understood a little bit about what that meant and what that was. So we're in a casino in downtown Carson somewhere. They rented out a ballroom that probably had room for about 500 people. And it's pretty packed. A few ladies sitting up front at a table, and one of them, probably a middle-aged blonde woman, just normal kind of voice and tone. She got into her meditation, and her voice and mannerisms and almost her facial expression and everything completely changed. And so supposedly, at this time I'm watching, and she's channeling a being that's in a starship floating somewhere up above us. And tell you the truth, I can't remember the exact subject material, but I believe it pertained to potential holocausts in the future, and that the human race was supposed to take some sort of solace in the fact that beings from another world or another dimension or another time space were looking after us and would be there to help us get through these holocausts or these catastrophes, and that we were supposed to feel some sort of safety from that, and they wanted us to feel comfort. So what they were speaking about was that there was, like, I guess you'd call it a cadre, of beings that were from that vibrational plane, and that at some point in time they had decided. Now I'm not sure, because I keep thinking this over and over. Do they have access to the timelines, and can they see into the future, or even just possible futures, almost like Dune, like Paul Muad'Dib, who sits in the center of a wheel of time and can see all the possible outcomes radiating out like spokes. But this cadre of souls had decided to come down to this planet on this time frame for some sort of purpose, unknown, at least to those people. So this is what they're discussing there at the channeling. So during the Q&A session, I decided to get up on the microphone, and I waited a few minutes, and I asked my question, which was, how will these entities, or these beings and these people, understand their purpose and what they're there for if they don't, if they're not given that information? The lady looks at me and smiles. She just stood up and she pointed right at me and she said, "You are one." So got a little bit awkward, got a little bit quiet in that place, and didn't know quite what to think about that at the time, because like I said, I'd grown away from the meditation circle and I'm wearing my Sex Pistols t-shirt with a mohawk and skateboarding around. That wasn't something that I was expecting.
You were age 13, is that correct?
I was 13, right around, 12,
And
13, something like that.
And the year was, let's see, Sex Pistols was what?
So we're going, well, I mean, I was an 80s punk, so we've probably been about 86. Yeah, it's 86. So, whatever.
Age 13, 86. Okay.
Yeah.
And this was the leader of this channeling session?
She was the main entity that was being channeled. And just the look on her face when she smiled and pointed at me was just, it's something that it's not going to leave me. It never really has. But it's also been something that I didn't, wear on my sleeve or try to share in any way, because it was actually a little bit funky. That night when we went to leave the casino, a lady approached us, gave my mother a card, talked about she was an author and wanted me to help her write a book. Maybe about how children could identify with this sort of movement and that. And at the time, she was just a little bit too forceful, I think, for my mom. And she said, no, we don't want to have anything to do with you. And the lady kind of stalked us until we had to get like a restraining order, basically, to get her away from me. So it was a little funky. And I was kind of glad to be done with that particular chapter of it. And I think, unfortunately, it probably soured it in my mind at that point in time.
So this is the different woman.
I just kind of kept it under the sleeve for all this time until.
This was a different woman than the one who had pointed you out. This was
the channeler. Yeah, this was just some lady that was in the crowd that saw me and saw the lady's reaction, and she said, "Wow, I want to get a hold of this kid and get some info out of him." And what she didn't understand, of course, and I still don't have the information. I haven't received that download packet yet. So how can I help her? And so, yeah, it was a little funky, to say the least, a little awkward. And yeah, I remember that night so vividly, like it's still right there. So yeah, when I think about it, it comes right at the top.
Have you heard of the Indigo Children?
I have. It sounds familiar. I can't tell you, I wouldn't be able to run it down, but it sounds very familiar.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've only read about it in passing, but apparently there is a select group of children that are endowed with these powers. This is not something recent. This goes back time immemorial, right? Mm-hmm. We have these children who have prophetic powers, even healing powers.
Sure.
So it wouldn't be outside the bounds of credibility that someone would identify you as such. Your mother witnessed this, correct?
Yeah.
And what was her reaction?
Well, it was kind of a mixture. Like I said, the weird lady kind of freaked her out a little bit, but I did sense that there was kind of a little bit of a pride to it, because that was something that she had gotten me into. I think that was something that she had also read into herself and was interested in that sort of a thing. So to think that someone that close to her might be associated with that, I felt that there was a little bit of a pride thing there. Mm-hmm. But like I said, it came and it went, and like the summer passes into fall, and it kind of washed away. But then later on, I found out that I had almost died in childbirth, and somebody put together what they call the step ins, where if a baby's not going to make it, say, and that there's one of those spirits that's floating out there waiting for the opportunity to come down, and they feel like they can check in, they can step in at the last minute and give that body enough strength to survive. And was born 6.5 weeks prematurely, so they didn't expect me to do very well at that point in time. And my mother's appendix had burst, so there was all sorts of a big emergency surgery and all that. So it was pretty dicey. So yeah, that almost when I heard that as well, it kind of correlated. I said, well, okay, that may make sense, that if that spirit was wanting to come down into a body to be available for this time frame, then that would have been an opportunity for it. And it just, you try tying it all together and not making too big a jump in your correlations, but it's just the kind of thing that raises a flag in your subconscious, and it's hard not to pay attention to it.
Are you the only child of your parents?
I am, yeah.
And just to step back a little bit, how did such a couple as your parents function? One of them, your father was in the Air Force,
Yeah,
and your mother was sort of a free-spirited. You described her as kind of hippie.
sure. Yeah, yeah. It was
They got along
well,
okay.
they got along okay for a while, but of course it didn't last forever. You know, um, I think I was maybe 3 when they got a divorce, something like that. So there were fundamental problems, but he was also kind of a 60s guitar playing, it was in bands and stuff before he joined the Air Force. So I don't think he wasn't quite as straight laced as Uncle Sam thought that he was, I think.
Mhm. Well,
And I've
after
seen some
all,
pictures on Guam with him, wearing funny masks and doing some funny things that the people at the base there probably wouldn't have taken very kindly to.
mhm. Now, what has gotten you more recently to revisit those, a lot of years have elapsed, but why are you
Yeah.
revisiting it now, age 13?
Yeah, well, I mean, I had talked about it with my current significant other because I think she's also very, very uh, special in a spiritual way, and she's just taken off like a rocket ship as far as her progression. And I owe her a lot as far as my health right now. She got me into the filtered water. She got me into good supplementation, organic foods. Um, and then getting into iodine and some other supplements that I'm taking right now, you realize that, well, all of that is decalcifying the pineal gland, isn't it? Well, no wonder things are starting to open up and become a little more clear. And some of the blocks that I think that I had within myself during my early 20s and 30s now are gone. They've just, you work through these things and you progress yourself. And I also kind of look around at the state of the world, and I never thought that it would get quite this dire where, you know, we have megalomaniac trillionaires enforcing ritualistic standards on us and completely dehumanizing the entire globe. And that's a huge statement. And if you would have uttered something like that 10 years ago, you probably would have ended up in a straitjacket. Now, not only is it, kicking around the conspiracy theory can, but to the point where it's like, really, conspiracy fact, more like, because once again, using the poor man's Occam's razor, you can cut it to pieces. And so I look at that and I feel like, with my music especially, because music is magic. Music is magical. If you look back into ancient times, the hieroglyphs can't make a sound. What they show us is the trumpets and the drums and the stringed instruments. And I think music for ancient peoples was very magical, and it connected the community, where when those folks would hear that music, they would know that it was time for a ceremony. They would know it was time for a ritual. They knew it was time for a sacrifice, depending on what the tune was. And that there were probably going to be all sorts of interesting things that were going to be put in the wine, and lots of revelry and merriment until the early hours of the morn. So using that and thinking about what music can do now in this time frame, in this time, perhaps someone like myself trying to realize that, is that my purpose? And I'm not saying it is, but I wouldn't mind exploring that possibility, that writing music that will awaken people would be something that I think would be, I would enjoy doing that. I wouldn't mind being the guy, put that on my shoulders, throw me in that briar patch. And I think what we talked about, I'll share this with everyone out there. We've been talking about a concept album based on some of these non-conspiracies, based on some of these precepts, and based on perhaps finding our way back to a more positive societal balance. And so, yeah, I've got 5 of those songs in the can, and just got a new recording interface, and I'm building here behind me. You can see the beginnings of a humble little studio, not only for talking with folks like you, but for creating some of this hopefully magical music that can awaken the souls of the sleeping giants.
This is just what we need. But
Mm.
going back a little bit further, a couple baby steps back For those of us who have not been on the stage, fronting a band, feeling all that air being pushed off the stage and all those
Hmm.
decibels, do you feel like you're a shaman? Do you have a shamanistic function in this larger ritual?
I have, I've had times where I've had people come up to me later and they say, "Boy, that last song was brilliant. That was great." And I'm thinking, I don't even remember what we did. You get lost in it, and it was like, like skateboarding, and people do skydiving and stuff like that. Well, it's pretty intense when you're up there because you never know what to expect. And a lot of the genres of music that I used to play, you'd literally be playing in these basement bars in the Midwest where there was chicken wire in front of the stage, and they'd be throwing PBR cans at you. So I think a lot of that was a lot of gimmick and stage presentations, if you will. But there were a few times when I was with a certain group, and everything felt perfect. And I'd written some of my original material that I felt strongly about, not only in the subject matter, but the tightness of the performance, that I did feel like I had some sort of power over the crowd. And yeah, it's palpable, and it's terrifying at the same time. I still get jitters almost every time I'm getting ready to go on stage, and I still love that, because it means that I'm still hungry. I'm still riding the tiger, and I haven't been eaten by it.
Mhm. Now, I'm asking you to speculate here. That's okay. Do you think that this crackdown on live music, like all the clubs have been closed down, and
Hmm.
even the people you see on YouTube who are doing these little tiny desk type concerts are wearing masks? They bought into it. It's very
Yeah.
sad. Do you think it's this? This is my thought. I think there's a concerted attack on live music as part of a
Oh yeah.
larger attempt to break down communities.
Oh
Please
yeah.
comment on that.
Well, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You're knocking that one out of the park, because they don't want us to gather together, especially in places where some clubs, some little rickety bars, they don't have expensive equipment and cameras sitting around to monitor us. Of course, we're dumb enough to carry around our own devices that they can monitor us on. But yeah, I think they're trying to steal the magic. I think they're trying to steal some of the last places that we can get together and be our true selves and come together and enjoy those, like you said, the shamanistic and the ritualistic, magical experiences that music can, and especially live music. As like you said, something very important, which is to confine it to the digital realm is extremely limiting, not only for your sound range as far as what can be sampled through these little speakers here, but you're not interacting with other people. You're not, enjoying a little adult beverage and libation. You're not feeling like you got out of the house and got to experience something that was fun, something that you go, wow, that kicked a lot of ass when you get home. You really enjoy it. So I do think that they're trying not only to do that with musicians, but with all the other different trades and the small mom and pops like barbershops and record stores. Um, and I think that's also part of the strategy to monitor and track us, because the mom and pops, the record shops, they don't have, like I said, they're not wired for sound. They're not wired for 5G quite yet. But when you go to Walmart, you go to Costco, you go to Kohl's. I think I was at a Lowe's not too long ago, and I looked over, and the self checkout camera was checking me out, if you know what I mean. I had the little red box around my head. When I just glanced over at it, I said, "Dang man, they're really paying a lot of attention to us, aren't they?" And I'm pretty sure that the router in the back office is sending it right out to Utah for NSA. So it's pretty easy to see, even for the common man like me, that they're cracking down every which way. I like to say I'm in the center right here with the rest of society, and we've got 100 different cannons pointed right at us, and they're trying every single way that they possibly can. And boy, we're in it pretty deep. But I do want to have optimism and confidence that the good people that are still here, maybe we can flip a couple of them over or something like that, or wake up some folks that are going to make um, big contributions to the effort that we need to mount now, because we're way behind. We spent too much time trying to, nibble around the edges and call each other kooks or whatnot. And I would say, I want to be wrong. I want to be that kook with a tinfoil baseball cap, and you can point at me and you can laugh. And I would love that, because that would mean that what we're thinking is about to happen to us, it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, this helps answer the question that I posed earlier as to why you're revisiting this experience you had, this pivotal moment at age 13. You're feeling all these forces of attack, these 100 cannon that are pointed at us, at our soul, not just our bodies, but
oh yeah, they want it all.
So let me ask more specifically about, you've written 5 tunes so far, and I assume you're going to do an album's worth. Mm-hmm. Do these have, I'm guessing, a anti-New World Order, anti-globalist feel to them or theme? Please explain.
Well, each one of them is going to be a little bit different. Of course, the subject material is going to be different, but I also kind of want to create different genres and styles of music within that. So, one is more of a reggae theme, and it's called Rally Around Jah Throne of Liberty. It's talking about rising up and taking it back, and that's something, it's almost like a vibrational theory. They say that if we can elevate our frequency, that we can evolve into something that's going to be better than what we were before. And I think they want to decrease that frequency. They want to stifle that. So so that's that one. That's the reggae one. I'm going to write one that's going to be kind of a Doors tribute type thing, but it's going to be talking about the bio research type Fort Detrick type stuff, or like what Frank Zappa talks about. The place where they make the imaginary diseases, which I think he's talking about Fort Detrick, and I believe his father was involved in that kind of research, if I'm not completely mistaken. So
yes, I've read something to that fact.
Yeah. Oh boy. And he said Jim Morrison's dad was an admiral, and it just, isn't that interesting when you find the little tidbits? I got another one that's kind of like a Gary Newman type song, and it's called "I Still Remember," and it almost is looking back, if things went bad, and when everything's in shambles, and a broken old man can still remember when things were free, rotary telephones, and playing pong, and riding BMX bikes with your friends in the street, and the memories that they can't quite erase, that were corrupt somehow. So there's that one. There's one that says, "You shall know them by their masks." Well, that's a good one. You shall know them by their masks. You shall know them by their lies. You should know them by the reptilian look when you flash them in their eyes. Just that kind of stuff. And I'm just going off the top of the lid with that. But I do have a lot of this written down and sketched out, and I'm going to start putting it down. And the guys in my band, Into the Void, are better musicians than myself. So I'm going to record the final tracks with them, and they can back me up and make it a little more polished. And then you can use it as bumper music on your radio show.
That would be wonderful. Save me a track. I can do some little chanking in the
Sure. No, that's I know you have a killer amp and guitar, and I'd love to have you down for some tracks.
All right. Wonderful. Let's leave it off right now. I would, because we're well, it's 45 minutes, close enough, but I don't want to start.
Time for daddy to cook dinner for the kiddies and all that.
I know it's getting late for you as well. And, you have to be.
I appreciate this. Before I let you go, I want to say how much I appreciate you giving me some time on your platform, being the common man that I am.
Okay.
And hopefully
you're quite welcome.
I'm going to do my best to try to elevate myself to a status worthy of your trust, and to be a part of the crew that helps to turn the ship around. I can't think of a better thing to try to persevere with,
Well, let me use a music analogy. I feel my function is, I'm the piano player. Mm-hmm. I'm feeding you chords, and you're singing over it. You're the soloist here. I'm just
acapella.
I'm comping for you in the background there, like your bandmates. That's my function. I'm trying to compliment you here. Wow. And I think in our next discussion, if you're willing and you'll have some time to think about it, I'd like to spend more time on your teenage years, your skating mohawk, rebellion time, your Sex Pistols era?
There's books that are meant to be written someday, but since I haven't broken my leg yet and slowed down, I just haven't been able to do it. But yeah, there's some memoirs there we could definitely we could explore a little bit.
Well, I think skating was one of those transcendent moments that you're alluding to. Music and other types of
Yeah.
activities that kids are not
Mhm.
allowed to do these days. They're
Mhm.
prohibited from even attending school, let alone engage in any type of physical activity.
We're doing some damage to these young kids, and that's one of the biggest shames. But yeah, once again, it gives you something to rally towards and say, you know what, this is.
So, Brian, before we leave off, what are your websites? And do you have a Patreon account or
No, I don't. The only thing I have for the band is a Facebook page, and that's going to be facebook.com/, and it's capital I, capital T, capital V, like into the void, and that's and SoCal at the end, ITV SoCal, and that should get you to it. And I think we're the only band called Into the Void that's from Oceanside, California, and we've got lots of videos and stuff up there. If anybody wants to get a hold of me on that to say hi or to check out some videos, we'd be happy to see you. And if you're ever on the coast and you want to come see us rehearse, we invite people out to kind of tailgate in Solana Beach every Sunday. We jam between about 2:30 and 5:30. So if you're in the neighborhood, stop by.
Neat. I'm glad to hear you're still playing out.
Well, we're in a way. We just kind
It's
of
kind of
open the door up by the dumpster, and get a taco from the shop next door and just rock as loud as we can.
Okay, it's one of those. All right. Brian Michael Baxter, thank you very much for joining me today. Ladies and
Sure.
gentlemen, you have the information, and hopefully we can continue the discussion soon.
Yes, yeah. We all need to have more discussions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon, Doc.
All right. Thank you.